It's not an easy conversation to have, but one that we have to in this society we live in. We've seen mass shooting after mass shooting after mass shooting, either at a grocery store, outside of the McDonald's in Chicago, or yesterday, an elementary school. How do we stem gun violence? You're hearing a lot about, quote unquote, common sense gun legislation or common sense gun laws. What exactly is that? And would that stop what we've seen in the past even just 24 hours, let alone the past 2 or 3 weeks? 217-629-7970. That's the phone number. I want to hear from you. Again, 217-629-7970. It's right here with Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and Talk. And if you need to get a hold of me off air, you can do so by emailing bishoponair@gmail.com. You can also follow me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. So again, the facts are an 18-year-old suspect's dead after he killed a grandparent, drove a truck to a local school, an elementary school, crashed the truck, got out wearing body armor, killing 19 children, 2 adults, dead in this. And he was taken out by a Border Patrol agent that was working a different scene away from this area, but then heard shots, came into the area, got into a gunfight, and took the bad guy out. So that Border Patrol agent also getting injured in this, but able to walk away. But this was at Robb Elementary School, and other reports indicate that the suspect here had hinted on social media that there could be an attack coming, and that he suggested kids should watch out, he said. And other reporting this morning going into some more background of the suspect who's now dead. That he may have been bullied by students for wearing black eyeliner or maybe having a lisp. But again, you're going to hear a lot more about all of the particulars around this case. But President Joe Biden last night, very empathetic in his early parts of his statements. Then he talked about when's it time to step up to the gun lobby? And he talked about common sense, quote unquote, gun laws. But what are those? And is that the way to do this? How do we stem gun violence? 217-629-7970 is the phone number. 217-629-7970. Listen, this isn't just something that's happening at one person that obviously has mental issues getting their hands on a firearm and going to a what some consider a soft target like a school, like a grocery store. This is also gun violence in Chicago, which every weekend, especially as it gets warmer, turns into mass shootings. We had, 2 people killed, like 7 shot up in Chicago outside of the McDonald's over the past weekend. And before that, you had just instance, one after the other in Chicago of gun violence. How do we address this? We heard earlier from some of the Republican candidates for governor, and one in particular, Max Solomon. He did say straight up that he will have armed guards in schools and making sure that these soft targets are safe, especially when it comes to the most vulnerable children. But is it even deeper than just that? What do we need to do as a society? Good morning. You're on WMAY.
Hey, Greg. Good morning. Sad that we have to be talking about this again. How many more times are we going to let it happen in this country? First of all, a couple quick points I'd just like to make. One is you don't hear about this in places like in Europe or in other countries, and I'm sure they've got people that have mental illnesses as well. What are they doing that's different? Are their laws stricter? Are they just taking care of people better?
It's probably access to firearms. I'll openly say that. But in other countries, you do have mass stabbings that happen, and people do die in those instances.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You also have people getting beaten with bats or people getting run over by cars. I mean, there's other acts of violence out there, so it's not just about gun violence per se.
Sure. The other thing, though, is, I thought of this morning. We did a pretty good job after 9/11 of putting people on a no-fly list. Why can't we put people on a no-buy list for guns and require that be checked out?
We do. There are universal, I guess not universal because there are some gun show loopholes that people want to fill, but we do have background checks. There is a federal background check law that's meant to provide that buffer from when somebody goes to purchase a gun to when they actually pick it up. And those background checks do happen across the country. Now, whether or not it's a private sale, that's something that's a little different. And those are some of the regulations that people are wanting to implement to have those types of background checks. Hey, I appreciate the call. We got more coming in, 217-629-7970. Good morning. You're on WMAY. How do we stem gun violence?
I don't know, but I just wanted to bring up a point that when you talk about gun violence and you bring up Chicago and shooting outside of a McDonald's or just shootings in general, like over the weekend, the numbers, it's all horrible. Granted, I'm not trying to argue any of it's good. But what I'm saying is you have two different types of violence there. You have, first of all, what looks like gang gun violence. And then you have, which we have mental illness in this country, violence, you know. But what's the common denominator there, Greg? It's the weapon. And just like you said and admitted to, that in other countries, they have mental illness too. But what's the common denominator here? It's the gun. So, and I'm a gun owner. I own probably 20-some weapons. Mine are all locked up in safes. I'm a gun advocate in a way, but I do believe in smart gun laws, and I do believe in something needs to be done.
And there should be screening mechanisms that are in place. And listen, in Illinois, we had an audit. This was probably about 15 years ago that they had this audit. Illinois State Police did, where counties were not reporting to state police those who were mentally ill, adjudicated in the courts mentally ill. And that should have been something to keep people from getting their hands on firearms when they are suffering a mental illness. But they weren't doing that. So you can have all these rules and regulations set up, but it requires follow through, right? And in this particular case, what do you do with an 18-year-old? He's legally able to buy a rifle in Texas at 18 years old. But should red flags have been seen? And as somebody told me off air earlier, when you see somebody posting on social media holding a expanded magazine making an idle threat, that should be a quick way to drop the dime on that person and get somebody over there because they're obviously having some serious problems. Could be doing some harm. 217-629-7970. Good morning. You're on WMAY.
Hey, I think Stephen Kerr had if you've watched what he did at the press release before a game last night, I believe it was.
Oh, he called out a bunch of senators. Yeah, I saw that, but that's the sports world. I mean, he can talk about sports. Good morning. You're on WMAY. I want to get as many calls as possible.
The only one I can think of right now would be to raise the minimum age for buying a weapon to 21.
And Illinois did do that because the age, I believe, nationwide for handguns is 21. And then it's 18 for other states when it comes to long rifles. Illinois, I believe, did update that to be you got to be 21 to buy a rifle as well.
If that's the case, that averts the Parkland shooting, and it hopefully averts yesterday. Then that way, the only way they can get one is if they steal it. And hopefully they get caught doing that.
Yeah.
So
and that could be one thing here. So that's an idea. Is that common sense gun legislation, as the president says? Good morning. You're on WMAY.
Morning, Greg. Hey, the other bad thing about all this common sense is that you would think it would be common sense, but a lot of the gun laws that they say are common sense are basically just ways to, restrict legal access. Of course, I mean, that's what that is. But it's them trying to just ban everything is their version of common sense. And I like what you're saying. We have shootings everywhere. Chicago, Illinois is one of the strictest states for gun laws. And guess what? If they want to make violence, they're going to find a way. The kid murdered his own grandma to get a gun, probably.
No, well, apparently he did buy it on his 18th birthday. So again, these are all preliminary reports. There's a lot of moving pieces, and it's just an absolutely tragic story. Just a few more calls here. Good morning. You're on WMAY. What do we do to stem gun violence?
Well, first of all, Greg, I really think that they do not, like my neighbor got 5 felonies with guns before he shot a man in Springfield and finally went to jail. You know, how many times do we slap people on the wrist and say, oh, well, they're just a young kid. Let's give them another chance. If you do a felony with a firearm, you should be held accountable, not slapped on the wrist and given 6 chances before you finally kill somebody.
But I don't think this kid falls in that category, this 18-year-old.
You're right, but then again, though, on social media, they stop you if you say something bad about the vaccine. They'll flag you, but they don't flag you for threatening children.
And apparently that's what this individual did. So maybe, instead of censoring certain people for political things that you don't agree with, maybe we train those resources on making sure that we see and flag some of the horrible things people are saying that could lead to violent acts. Because it seems like time and again, these instances are perpetrated by individuals who had red flags all around them. 217-629-7970. We'll get to one more here. Good morning. You're on WMAY. Hold on. Let's try this one. And you're on WMAY. Good morning.
Good morning. So I've been processing this, right? So all the criminals in Chicago, criminals are going to have guns regardless, right? And clearly in a state like Texas, everybody supposedly has guns. They got guns in their rear windshields. So, like, that's not stopping it. So my best, give the homeless vets a job, right? Protect our children.
Yeah, and that's an idea that you're going to hear a lot about is not just having guards at schools, but maybe even having teachers with guns that are trained. And all of this, of course, is going to be, I think, a point of focus for the days and weeks ahead. All right, got to take a break. It's here with WMAY. Thanks for tuning in and chiming in, and we can have civil conversations about these things without painting with broad brushes and saying that somebody's responsible for something when they're not. And hope to help facilitate that conversation here on WMAY.